Into the Nexus is a production of amove.tv. Bookmark Amove TV for other great video games and esports podcasts. Into the Nexus is sponsored by listeners like you via patreon.com/ITN. Welcome back, everyone. This is Into the Nexus. I'm Garrett Weinzorl. I'm sitting here with my buddy Kyle Ferguson. As always, we've got some sick new intro music thanks to Gorath. Some of you may know him as Bo Schwartz or as one of the hosts over on the Core podcast. But the thing that is exciting me the most today, guys, it's not fancy new graphics. It's not shredding guitar riffs. It's not the fact that Kyle's beard looks a lot better than mine. And that we are both being overshadowed by an even better beard on the show. It's the fact that we are joined today by a very special guest, DunkTrain. Welcome to the show, dude.
Yo, what's up, man? Happy to be here. That was some pretty gnarly intro music, so that was killer.
Yeah, Gorath is a sick axe man. He knows.
I wish I could play like that. I can only play ETC that well. I can't play actual guitars that well.
I can do power chords, usually about 4 of them, and then repeat. That's about as far as I take the guitar, but welcome, man. There's been it's hysterical as I to break the fourth wall a bit as I was messaging you last week, because you messaged me actually in the middle of last week's episode saying, yeah, man, I can make it. So we announced it in the middle of the episode, and then 20 minutes later, the news about Cloud9 broke. And our chat room was just like, what? Huh? They just announced DunkTrain was coming on? Was this planned? And I'm like, no, it was not planned. We just wanted to have him on to talk Medivh.
Yeah, funny thing, the announcement was supposed to go out like that morning, and then our host site was down for Cloud9, so like it just kept getting pushed later and later and later in the day. Oh. And like I wasn't sure if I should tell you before you announced it, like if that was happening. I didn't want to like soft announce it on your thing, so... Oh, well, hopefully it was amusing for the chat to hear that and then have some drama.
It was. Actually, we got a lot of tweets and emails that were like, that was really cool to get an unscripted reaction from Garrett and Kyle on Cloud9, disbanding. So, so how has your week been? It's been a week since the news broke, and I know it's not all said and done yet, but I'm assuming you knew sooner than last Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone's kind of known that something like that was going to happen. We weren't sure exactly what was going to go down for a while, so it wasn't like a huge shock to us, but I don't know, it was definitely still pretty intense when it happened, although my week since has been nice. Like, there's a lot of weight that gets lifted off your shoulder, I guess, when you can just take a step back. Like, you don't have to worry about, I don't have to worry about competitive right now. Like, I can just think like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to be on another team? Like, I loved competing, but is that what I want to do? And, it's been good to take a breather.
Yeah, breakups are hard, but then you make your own microwave dinner and you didn't have to talk about what you were going to do for the night or what you're going to watch. So I understand the freedom of it. Do you know what's next for you? Just keeping horizons open? I mean, you got a lot of fans and there's a lot of people excited to see you keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I know I always get so much support whenever I stream or I'm on a podcast or something like this. I know I love that, but I don't know yet. I don't know if continuing to play competitive was where I want to go. Last night I was joking that maybe I'd be a caster. I'm investigating some other alternatives still in esports or related to heroes. Like, hope maybe some of that'll work out. So right now I'm just kind of like putting the feelers out there, investigating all the options. Don't want to hop onto a brand new team if there are other fish in the ocean, so to speak. So see how it goes.
That sounds surprisingly liberating. I mean, you sound like you're in a really good space.
I try. And then I solo queue.
Oh, you're gonna break that wall down early, aren't you?
Hey, man. It's a big wall. You gotta get started.
That's a good point. So before we get into our official, we've got the bullet list. Before we get into the official news rundown, let's talk as 3 players of the game. How was your solo queue experience? Because if anyone's been following my personal Twitter account, all they have seen is a blood level that is too full of salt.
Yeah, I think that's been the general consensus of the high level players. It's pretty much like duo queue or suffer. is the way it's working right now. There was a really funny screenshot posted actually by Iacona, I think, where it was literally like the team was Iacona, King Caffeine, K1 Pro, I think Cawthon and like another pro were all on the same team of Hero League, and you're like that probably shouldn't have happened. That's not okay.
Ooh.
Like I feel bad for the other team. And then some games I had where it was just like, really, really obvious not on the same level play, but it's a team game. You're queuing up alone. What do you expect?
Well, we have the freedom of being slightly anonymous when we queue. I mean, we've got our show personas, and then for the most part, my battle tag's pretty on the down low. But you get in, do people just go, "Oh, we got DunkTrain, he's support," and that's it?
Actually, I would say the most common response is that's not the real DunkTrain, or like, is this guy a poser? That's like the first thing always in chat. And then you'll give them like 45 seconds. Someone will look up the stream, see that I'm online and I'm in their game, and they're like, "Oh no, it's the real one." And then people will say stuff like, "Oh, I'm a fan," or "Oh, you suck," and like, it is what it is. Although
that's a good way to start a game.
I don't think I actually play support just because people know I'm support. It's just there aren't that many people, I feel like, in my experience in Hero League, who are willing to fill roles. Like everyone like snap highlights Leeming or Kael'thas, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm playing support or tank this game. Especially if you're one of the last two picks. So that's my general experience.
Yeah.
It is a crazy meta right now, and everyone's fighting for those top 3, 4. I mean, of course, the Leeming, Kael'thas, those seem to be the first two. You can get a little mind gamey if you want to get the first Kael'thas, so you get rid of the Illidan, and maybe they don't know you're going to get rid of that burst or something. Sometimes Tracer makes her way in there, and as we get lower in leagues, we have things like ETC and Morales leak their way into the bans. But what would you suggest people have to be able to play right now? Because that's kind of what it feels like. Whoever can get the first two picks that makes sense or have seen enough esports play, people go, "Oh, I know this comp. I'll add ETC to it, and I'll do this." And then you get a good group. But someone picks Lunara first, and everyone goes, "Well, I got Dahaka, and let's throw an Artanis in there." And
I mean, are you trying to suggest that first rotate Nova Sergeant Hammer isn't the best possible draft? Because I have multiple Hero League games which will attest that is what my first and second pick on my team think is the best choice.
I'm sure there's plenty of evidence to support that, and you probably have some wins on those particular comps. It's just funny how much panic goes in when those first picks go weird.
Well, what you just threw up there, Kyle, it wasn't panic. It was like everyone just got on. They jumped aboard the crazy train. It's like, well, if Lunara's getting picked first, all right, fine. Let's get a Nova and a Dahaka, and let's just let this crazy snowball grow.
Mm-hmm. It's actually funny. I feel like if both teams have like weird compositions, I feel like whichever one has the more ridiculous looking composition always wins. Like I'll get into games and I'll be like, both of our compositions look like people randomly mashed their hands on the keyboard, and whatever heroes it spelled out are the ones that got picked. And whoever just has the most ridiculous one seems to win for some reason. I don't know what happens in those games, but
speaking of which, you gave me a great idea for a new hero. Mario teaches typing. You got to spell words to cast the spells.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Have you ever played? There's a game on the StarCraft 2 arcade actually, where you basically send waves of enemies at your opponents, and they have to type out, like they'll put a random word from the dictionary above the unit, and the more you pay for it, like the harder the word is, and you'll get like a ridiculously long word, or you'll have to send like 50 units that are all like bear or cat, or you're like it's ridiculous, but it's a ton of fun.
I have Typing of the Dead, man.
Oh yeah,
I love those games.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I forgot that people turned all these custom games that used to be just on Warcraft 3 customs or StarCraft customs. They're like, oh, let's make real games out of these and make money. So that's cool.
So I guess back to Kyle's initial question, who do you think folks should be kind of spending their time to learn right now if they're out there solo queuing, if they're out there wanting to bring the most that they can to a Hero League draft?
Ooh. So I mean, it's obvious that, let's say if you're an assassin player, you should know how to play Kael'thas. Like, if you happen to get first pick and it happens to be open, you want to be able to pick that comfortably. But at the same time, it's probably a low investment. A low return on investment in the sense of practice time, because you won't get to play it that often. So you kind of want to know it, but you want to specialize on a hero that you're going to get more frequently. Like right now, I think Greymane goes late in a lot of drafts, especially when you're not at the highest level, and he's a hero you can be hugely impactful on. So if you're a range carry, yeah, maybe you want to make sure you at least know the fundamentals of Kael'thas so you can play him if he's open. but maybe your main is gray main, and like you're going to get that in a lot of drafts. Similarly, for like tank players, I would definitely recommend like ETC, Muradin. Those are always good in Hero League. I feel like they can just function well on their own. You don't need a ton of team coordination. Like sometimes we'll see Stitches picks and stuff like that in Hero League, and those can work out, but it feels like you need to get luckier on how coordinated your team is, right, to make those work. Like sometimes you'll play a game of Stitches and you'll just hit like 10 hooks and none of your targets will die, and you'll be like, okay, I guess nobody was ready for those. Like, so that's kind of rough. So I would definitely recommend the simpler ETC Muradin Johanna tanks. As far as healers,
go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say play whatever you want for healers because, Rhaegar, Uther, Brightwing, whatever you're comfortable with is probably going to be your best bet.
So you wouldn't put too much weight on Divine Shields or Blinding Winds or anything like that that might help the game out, or just play your best because it's support.
I think for the average player, you're going to get more value out of playing your best hero than like trying to outdraft the opponent or whatever. Like counter picks mean a lot in competitive, I would say. But for your average Hero League experience, it's better to pick your best hero than to pick your worst hero who happens to counter their team, in my opinion anyway.
Oh, that makes absolute sense. Where does Falstad fall in this? Because I'm freaked out every time I see him pick because the skill range of players on Falstad is shocking.
Oh, he's shocking?
Whoops.
Yeah,
Well
so
done.
I think Falstad is a really interesting one because whether you use Gust well or not probably decides every game you play as Falstad. Like, I have had games where the Falstad on my team will just like constantly Gust at the same time as we try to initiate. You'll lose those fights because now your initiating ult is down and your Falstad Gust is also down. Or you'll have fights where like I had one fight where I was playing against Caterpillar on Anub'arak, and he broed into my team, and the exact time he broed in, our Falstad, who was like a random in my Hero League, gusted the rest of their team out, and we instantly killed a noob, and that's like the dream situation. So if you're playing a lot of Falstad and you land those insane gusts, you can be amazing. So he's definitely like a huge amount of variance, though. But I think he's fantastic if you're good with Gust.
I agree. I feel like Kyle and I have had surprisingly similar games, given it's amazing maybe because we placed at very different ranks, Kyle.
My placement games were so interesting. Day one, I was 5-0, and that it seemed like day one, maybe I was just on that good 50%. But we were making awesome choices. They were making okay choices. They took Gray Main, Raynor at the same time. So we said, okay, let's get double blinds with Johanna and Lily. And we kicked butt. And so day one, just fantastic. Day two, 1-4. I can't complain. I'm extremely pleased. I got the Diamond 3. But just the extremes of what the game can be right now are just interesting. I feel like you got to take a week off. Maybe everyone's coming in. Everyone's got to get freshened up. You have that person who goes, who's Tracer? And you go, oh my goodness. You see Master Skins, you go, all right, wait a second. That must be from 6 months ago.
That's part of what I've been seeing as well. There's been the things that have confused me the most that I've been seeing is a surprising amount of people that want to solo tank on Leoric.
Oh no!
And a surprise.
I had one of those in my placement too.
I saw 3 of them. I think 2 of them were on my team. We did not win those games, and one of them was on the opposing team, and we won that game. And then a surprising amount of Tassadars that want to solo heal, which I'm not necessarily against. I've had some fantastic games with solo support Tassadars, but it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh boy, solo tank Leoric, the good old days, man.
Oh, I loved him so much. Just it was frightening. You were a giant skeletal man, and you just went wah, and everyone ran for it, and you tanked through this fear that no one wanted to get touched by you. But maybe mobility got so high that the slow no longer matters. All the nerfs, the scaling test map, all that stuff kind of messed with him. But
that's certainly how it feels to me, because if I go up, the rare time I go up against the Leoric, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm on Li Ming, I'll teleport away. If I'm Anub'arak, I burrow charge away. If I'm Tracer,
yeah.
And those are a lot of recent heroes you just named after Leoric, except for Anub'arak and such. And the slow, the Entomb, those don't locked down like they used to, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also doesn't have like the huge wave clear advantage like he used to, and that's a bigger deal than I think a lot of people realize. So he's definitely in a rough place.
Yeah, it is strange because it was that time, right, where Johanna Leoric, that was it.
Yeah.
That was your tank pick. And
Yeah.
and God help you if one team got both of them as their double tank comp. But Johanna more or less kept her lane clear. She's still perfectly fine with lane clear with knight takes pawn, but Leoric really kind of, I feel like, took a massive hit by losing that lane clear.
For sure.
So, anyways, yeah. So just funky games, guys. Funky games all around. Like I said, I'm sure if folks are checking my Twitter, it was so salty, but I pulled out of the tailspin. Just the way you should, guys, and that's by winning a game against a team where their tank was named Turd Ferguson. So that at least put a smile back on my face after a horrible losing streak.
It's hard to not have a smile on your face when you beat that guy in a game, I bet.
Yeah.
Like, you just... I actually love just looking at all the players' names in the games, and some people just come up with the funniest things that make no sense, or you'll just like try to say the name out loud, and you're like, did you just smash your face on the keyboard to get this name, or, just went to a random letter generator? All right, we'll go with this.
That's how I played Genji, so maybe.
Yeah.
There was a surprising amount of trolly names in my games, in my placement games. Just some really silly like things you would have thought was funny when you were 12.
Yeah.
But oh man, yeah, I saw Turd Ferguson, and first of all, I thought of you, Kyle, because that's your last name. Just Ferguson, not the Turd.
Thanks.
That's probably a Smurf, actually.
That's what everyone on Twitter was saying. They were like, "Oh, that's Kyle's extra Smurf account."
Garrett's tweeting that he's losing. I'm gonna get in. There we go.
Get some free MMR, boys.
Yeah,
That's great.
farm up on Garrett.
Well, it didn't work out, Kyle. It didn't work out.
Yeah,
Well,
for release weeks, Hero League has been rather sane in the Medivh department. And
yeah, that's absolutely true.
Kind of surprised me. I know people have to get to level 5, but I figured day 2 we would be kind of in the danger territory. I fought one Medivh. He was a streamer, so I guess he was doing it more for giggles, and they ended up losing rather handily. What do you think of Medivh right now?
I don't know, man. He is a complicated hero. I think he's probably the highest skill floor hero that we've seen to date. Meaning he's the hero who you need to be really, really good, not only at the game, but with Medivh himself, I think, to have a big impact on the game. I don't know yet if he's bad, because from looking at him, I imagine in coordinated games, he'd be insane. But you have to have some huge cojones to pick him in a Hero League game where you have no idea what the level of communications, coordination with your teammate is. Your team probably won't know what you do, so your teammates will take portals out of fights. They won't take them when you need them to take them. Like, they'll never use your shields right. So I think he's going to take a little while for people to really understand what he does and how to play with him before you really want to pick him in Hero League. He's not just like a damage dealer where you can it's not Tracer where you just pick her up and kill people, right? You need actually good coordination. You need to know what's going on, I feel like, to get value out of him.
He is such an extremely unique kit. It's very unlike anything we've seen so far.
Like, they do anything to him, he could become amazing. I mean, you add a couple more points of damage to his Arcane Rift basic Q. If there's a hero to hit in lane, you can lane clear. Great.
Yeah. He's interesting, man. I don't know what to say, honestly. I feel like he's been the hardest hero to evaluate that we've ever seen in the game. I mean, I just don't actually know how good he is. And that's a good thing, I think. I think people are going to have to learn, and that's something I'm happy about.
Yeah, I'm very excited about him. At the same time, I'm also petrified, just as from a solo queue standpoint, like you said. That was one of the things I was it probably was the single thing I was the most afraid of going into my placement games was like, oh boy, Medivh was also released this week. Well, let's see how this goes. And surprisingly, I feel like we've all been kind of like poking fun at our placement experiences. The one thing I'll say is I haven't come across one person trying to grab Medivh. I'm still perplexed by solo tank Leoric, but at least no one tried to take Medivh, so that wasn't something I had to experience. Now, Kyle, I think you ran into a couple, right?
Just the one.
Just the one. Okay.
And it didn't enable the Thrall enough. He went with the Arcane Explosion, which I think is an adorable talent, and it makes the wah sound that you want it to and all. And but I don't know if that's where you go. I mean, right now there's the Blizzard blog where they posted all about Medivh for the week, and they suggest 3 heroes with him: Arthas, Chromie, and Medic. And I think the most interesting thing about Medivh for me, and we have you here, DunkTrain, what do you put with him for support? And Medic seems like a huge cut in your damage for a team.
Yeah, the Medic suggestion with Medivh is actually really interesting. I think it's going to be kind of like a Tassadar where you're playing an interesting balancing act of like, if I pick Medivh here, do I have enough damage left on my team to kill my targets, right? So the first thing I really wanted to test was like a Tyrande comp with Medivh as your secondary support, right? Because he brings a lot of utility, and then you could have really aggressive divers like ETC, Muradin that you could portal into the backline, and they land a stun, and Tyrande can always follow up. She can mark the target, so you don't really suffer as much for having a support plus a Medivh. That was my first instinct, and I haven't gotten to test it yet, but I expect that could work pretty well. Picking Medic seems like it would be scary. I mean, it would be hard to kill the Medic because you can portal the Medic out of danger, or you can give the Medic invulnerability when you need it. But then how are you actually killing your targets is an interesting dilemma. So maybe it depends a lot on what the enemy team has too, right? So if the enemy team has heroes that are hard to kill, maybe you can't really afford to pick Medivh because you won't have enough damage. But if the enemy team is really high damage and low survivability, Medivh is probably way better because he shields their first target, they don't get the kill, and you can turn it around on them without them having time to, heal off your damage.
That's true. There is that potential for Greymane to try to bark all over Medic, avoid all that damage, and then the rest of the team catches up to the back.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of, support, are there any heroes that you've been really interested in? I mean, we've seen the hammers teleporting while sieged. And one of the cool ones I've seen is a butcher that charges in, gets the kill, and then is able to get out with a portal.
I actually really wanted to portal the butcher in, so Furnace Blast, like you couldn't react to it if Medivh just puts the portal on you, and then like an almost full charge Furnace Blast butcher just shows up, and you're like, oh, there's half my health just gone. Who else is interesting? I think the invisibility talent at level 20 could be really cool with ETC. I'm not sure how it works with channeling abilities, but imagine if you could like cast Invis after he starts the mosh. That would be interesting. Or even just invising him so he can walk in and mosh. Because
just for the setup.
Yeah, Shadowstock ETC has always been good, right? So Medivh's another hero who provides invisibility to other heroes, and we don't have very much of that. So I think it could definitely catch people off guard, although it is only a level 20 talent. I don't know who else. Somebody recommended the Murky Medivh, and then you just have your Murky invulnerable like 2/3 of the game. He just runs around and bubbles in people's faces, and then you invuln him. I don't think that would be very effective, but it would definitely be frustrating to play against.
Yeah. Well, I'm anxious to see. Do you think it's going to be some time before we see Medivh popping up in some tournament play?
Yes, I think he's not available at the championship going on right now in Sweden, but even after that, I expect it to take, another couple weeks into the next season, the fall events, before we really see him come out, and probably even longer before we see his true potential. I mean, Medivh seems like the kind of hero where we'll watch the first people who play him and think, oh my gosh, that guy's so good at Medivh, and then 6 months later, we'll watch the people who play him at that time, and you're like, oh my god, those people who played Medivh at the beginning are trash, dude. These new guys are where it's at. So that'll definitely be interesting to see how the strategies around him evolve as the game develops.
Oh, right now he's sitting at 22%. I feel like we keep saying this recently, but the lowest hero to release so far. Chromie has made her way. That seemed like it was skill dependent. Very much so. People had to get down their timings. They had to become good Chromies. And the buff helped out quite a bit recently. But Medivh is going to be, I think it's going to be a long haul, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if he is actually really underpowered. I think it's hard to tell. When you have a hero that does such unique things, it's definitely difficult to get a grasp on where he sits balance-wise. I mean, in my Medivh games, I feel impactful, but maybe I'm just not because I'm not actually putting out the raw numbers that are necessary, But it looks good when it does something cool. Like when a portal makes a good play and it looks good, it's like a really high moment. It's like a good feeling. But maybe that doesn't make up for how often you just don't do enough. I think only time will tell if he's actually balanced or underpowered.
I'm happy to hear that because that's what Kyle and I were kind of spitballing over the past couple of weeks since he was revealed. We were both in the same boat. It's like it's going to take a lot of coordination. We don't think he's going to be like your solo queue hero.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, if you look at what makes a hero good in solo queue, it's typically not finesse or clutch timing things. It's like big buttons like a mosh pit or gust. Even just you want something that changes the game immediately when you press it. You don't want something that like this could be this really cool thing, but it's really narrow. I mean, it's just hard to get that to work when you don't have coordination.
Yeah, exactly. You can't put that much responsibility on the other four players that you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to ask of your team of people you just met.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Let's move into the proper news rundown because there's quite a bit to discuss this week.
We're on, boys! Let's liven up this place!
Point me to the stage.
Click the play button and let's get started.
So obviously the biggest news this week is that Season 1 is here. It is live. The ranked play revamp has come in. So everyone get out there, claim your disco balls in whatever division they put you in and level that sucker up into a galaxy, as Kyle put it. So it's exactly what you're doing. You're just spinning that disco ball until it's a galaxy.
The system's great. I mean, it's very cool. It's been excellent to see streamers on the edge, that highlight match, defending their title as they're about to fall down. It's very engaging. And I love a lot of the systems that they've made for rewards. And in fact, speaking of rewards, we already know them for this whole season.
We do. We can catch ourselves an elemental lizard mount, which is pretty cool looking. I wonder if is every mount just going to be elemental for every season, or is it every year? Is there going to be a theme? I don't know. At some point, you're going to have to figure out. I'm sure they'll run out of ways to make animals look like fiery and like they're made out of gems.
I don't think so. I think you could just keep doing that forever.
Yeah, we have a couple seasons to go. We got the normal horse. We got Billy that you can elemental up.
Mm-hmm.
Elemental bike. I guess we're starting to stretch here now.
Elemental bike.
Eventually you can do elemental spiders. Turn the mechano spider elemental.
Ooh.
Actually, that would be a pretty cool looking
get
mount.
wild with it.
Yeah, but that's a good point. If anyone can do spiky flames into oblivion, I'm pretty sure Blizzard is that. Although at some point they're going to have to fall back on their roots of spikes and skulls on everything.
Yeah, and shoulder pads.
And
you'll
giant...
just ride a pair of spiky shoulder pads across the.
Oh, that'd be amazing. And then there'll be a patch that makes them smaller, and everyone will freak out.
Mm-hmm. Sad day.
Someone out there right now who played WoW and remembers that patch on Orcs is losing their minds, but
it was absurd.
That one guy who watches the show and remembers that patch.
Steve, you know who you are. I'm enjoying it overall as well. Again, my experience with my placement matches wasn't the greatest in the world. It got to end on a high note at least pulled out of my my losing streak before my last few games, but I like it better than just the numbered system. We bring up the science of fun a lot on this show, and I feel like Team One's done a pretty good job. It is very slick. I feel like I have a much better idea of where I'm falling, why I am falling there, and what I need to do to move up. No.
And we have unranked play now, and I haven't touched quick match. I'm not really sure we got a lot of modes now.
We do.
And, we got Team League, we got Unranked. Lots of people are calling for solo only Hero League. Looking at the current leaders on the Grandmaster leaderboard, we're seeing some tricks played. It's duo queues. I even heard they went to Singapore for it in the middle of the night so they could get out of tired people or something.
Sorry, what?
I don't know about that.
I
but
missed
I do
this.
Know. Yeah, I do know Wiz was the first Grandmaster, I think, with I don't remember who he got it with, but they were duo queuing the whole time. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you have to expect, right? For the first ones, You just have to duo queue to increase your win percentage, I think, if you're trying to race.
Sure.
I
And
agree.
if there's nothing wrong with racing. I mean, there's people who do the WoW thing, get in the beta, figure out the best farming areas, and that's their choices and how they choose to play a video game. The Singapore thing was that, it's part of the American server, and some people have chosen to select those servers in the middle of the night in hopes of getting sleepy people.
Ah, gotcha. Wouldn't you?
That
also,
seems like a double-edged sword.
I was about
I don't
to
know
say,
if I
right,
would
you
want-
have to change your
ping,
own.
right? But it
Wouldn't you have to
Yeah.
change your own sleep schedule? Because otherwise, wouldn't you also be quite tired and not necessarily playing your best?
you got to do what you got to do, man.
All right. I can tell you about every single Halo game that's come out. I've stayed up all night to beat it with my friends, and we have a way harder time on the later levels when it's 5 a.m. than we did when we started. So, that's nuts. That's crazy. I love the idea of changing your sleep schedule to get an edge in Heroes of the Storm. But
Yeah, dude.
hey, I mean, it's the logic is sound. I understand where they're coming from, but that's dedication, Holmes. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So yeah, I haven't played anything other than my placements as well. I haven't touched Unranked Draft. I'm very excited that it's there. I have, since I've been in the client a lot this week, I have seen folks in the AMU TV chat channel talking about it, and folks seem very happy that it's there, that they can finally go enjoy a draft experience without really kind of experiencing any form of ladder anxiety, and I get that. It makes sense to me.
I think it's totally a good thing for the game. I mean, I think one thing that really frustrates me when I play quick match is mirror matches. It's just like some of those are really annoying. Like I a lot of those times those matchups don't feel right. Like when you're playing the game and you're playing a hero against different heroes, you feel like there's a lot of tools you have. But when you're playing mirror matches, I feel like a lot of the time the game gets frustrating. So I'm glad to have an option that gets rid of those, because for me at least it's a big deal. So I would have always chose unranked draft over blind pick, basically. So it's just to avoid mirror matches.
Well, and the release weeks are rather rough, as is your tracer better than their tracer? Game over in
Yeah.
some regards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'm happy it's there too, and it's also we get emails all the time, Kyle, especially leading up to this. Before this patch or before this ranked play revamp was even announced, from folks saying, well, how do I prepare for draft? I'm kind of afraid. And it's like, well, now you have this safe spot to go and experience draft and train and learn what it's like.
Yeah.
To an extent.
You too can learn what it's like to have first pick Sergeant Hammer and Nova.
Exactly.
Yes.
My experience has been first pick murky, and we won the game. Because it's unranked draft, everything's wacky. One team bans out the Kael'thas, the other guy goes, I don't like Sylvanas for no reason. And it's fine. And it's fun. And you're absolutely right. To get people experienced in draft, there is no good tool. I mean, maybe we could build some sort of calculator online you could draft against, but you have to update it after every esports event because those things trickle down. People's mindsets change. And it's just impossible to train for. I mean, that's something I wanted to ask you here, Dunk. Everyone kind of has their pet idea, their pet project that they wish they could just have on the launcher. Hey guys, did you know that you don't have to cite at the top? Like whatever it is that you personally would love to broadcast to everyone in the Heroes community. What would be your tidbit to play better?
Ooh. My tidbit. Okay. If I had to tell everyone playing one thing, it would probably be don't be that guy who's soloing the Merc camp right when the objective comes up, okay? The time for doing the Merc camp is before the objective. If you start the objective when the notification for it appears on your minimap, if you start the Merc camp then and you're alone, it is not your team's fault that they didn't help you with the mercenary camp, okay? It's your fault for picking it up and starting it and being at 1 health by the time you finish it and the objective comes up. So it's your fault. Just go to the objective with your team. You don't need those mercs. They'll be fine. They'll do their own thing. They don't need you. Just let them be. Get to the objective.
Had this exact thing happen with a last pick Rexar, who was our only warrior. And that's exactly what he went and did.
You had me on board for half a second. I'm like, maybe he's taking a boss. Like maybe this is an
Yeah.
okay statement Garrett's about to say.
No, we were level 6 and it was Tomb of the Spider Queen.
Oh, even
Nice.
better.
We were
Taking
level
mercs on
6 when he
Spider-
started their bruisers, and he was there for like 4 minutes dealing with
Yeah.
those bruisers.
the stealing your opponent's mercenaries is even more true of this. Like, don't just walk on your enemy's side of the map and be like, don't worry, guys, I got this.
I guess if I have to defend the guy slightly, he didn't get found out, but those bruisers they died immediately. They got nothing done, and we never had a warrior with us to turn in any gems. They got 2 hand-ins by the time he got those bruisers down.
Oh, he got those bruisers though.
Yeah, it was.
He got
man.
that Ford ammo.
Yeah. I'm so I find it hilarious that that's what you chose to put on blast on this podcast.
Yeah,
because I'm still feeling a little grumpy about that particular game.
Everyone has one of those games where you're just like, dude, this guy's like, somebody will be doing your mercs or something when the objective's up, and they'll be pinging you, or be like, it took me like 3 minutes, guys. You could have just helped you. I'm like, no, the objective was up. I couldn't have helped you. That wasn't an option. Please.
The tribute was up. The shrine had popped. The altars were on blast. Like, yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So, but coming back to the rank play revamp, overall, I'm pretty impressed by all of it. I love that we already know what the rewards are. I'm glad you brought it up, Kyle, because at first I too, like you, I was kind of surprised, like, wow, we already know what the rewards are. But honestly, it makes kind of sense because I feel like you should know from the very beginning. All right, what am I getting? What am I fighting for? So I know how hard to hit it this season. Because not everyone is like you, Kyle, or like you, Dunk, I'm sure, and they don't. This isn't the only game they play, so I like that they're informing us what the rewards are at the end of the first season.
You play other games, but you always have your pet project, the one you're taking real serious in the background. If someone asks to throw down, you got to be able to say what it is. If someone asks your favorite color, you don't go, well, no, you got to say it.
That is true. That is true.
I mean, you need the call-out game. The like, oh, you think you're better than me at video games? 1v1 me, mid only, no items. Like, the whole Fox Final Destination, like whatever your game of choice is, you need the call-out. Like, no, gamer cred. Let's do this. I'll whoop your butt, kid. Like,
I'm glad that you used the Smash Brother reference too, because that is my game personally. If you want to throw down, I will take you any day as Link. Let's do this.
Hey, I mean, Smash is just a classic because everyone played it, so.
Yeah.
Everyone has that frame of reference, right? And you'll know the people who like know they're good at Smash, they like won't even bring it up. They'll just let you like threaten them at Smash, and then they'll just destroy you.
Yeah.
It happened to me my first week in college. I have never been whooped so hard in a video game as I was my first week of college at Smash Brothers. So, but yeah. So and as we're moving down the news lineup, the other big thing is Medivh release. We already talked a very good amount about Medivh, so he's out there. Get out there and try him, folks. If you want to listen to the last 4 weeks of episodes, we mentioned him a little bit on every single episode since he's been revealed. So let's move right into.
Hang on.
What?
We had a
what?
trailer. We had a trailer.
Oh,
and there was a certain evil man at the end that I'm very excited about.
Yes.
You are right.
That's so exciting.
Are you really that surprised though? Are you that surprised with the Warcraft movie out and Medivh just released that Gul'dan is right around the corner?
Not surprised a little bit, just excited.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
me.
Fine.
Well, that 4chan guy said nothing about Gul'dan.
Wait, no, I'm pretty sure he did.
Oh, did he?
It was in the
think
list
so.
because Gul'dan had already been confirmed at BlizzCon. Was it last year or was it 2 years ago? I think it may have been 2 years ago. Where one of the devs on the BlizzCon stage was like, "There's no way we're not working on Gul'dan," and all the other devs just stared at him like, "You can't say that."
He was ushered off.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm super hyped for Gul'dan because the Warlock is a class we've been missing, right? Like you don't have any Warcraft universe Warlock, even anything close to it. You have Nazeebo, which is like Witch Doctor, but it doesn't really feel the same, right? So I'm actually super excited because it's like a really powerfully resonating lore role, I think, to have in the game and to flesh out the game more.
Were you a Warcraft fan? Did you play WoW?
Oh yeah. Oh, you better believe I played WoW. I mean, I've seen the Warcraft movie twice. That's how much of a Warcraft fan I am.
Good man.
Read the books, played every WoW X pack. Like, I love the Warcraft universe, man. It's really special.
A nerd after my own heart. So well, I don't care if it's not heroes. I have to ask the question: faction, race, and class.
Oh, Horde, Resto Shaman. I mean, I liked Tauren, but I ended up re-rolling for the racials, like depending on like for PvP PvP you wanted to be a Tauren because you needed Stomp in Burning Crusade, and the bonus health was really good for Resto. And then I re-rolled, I think it was Troll.
Yes.
For Shaman, for what was the passive? I don't even remember the passive in the X-Pack. I rolled it. Wasn't Berserk the Orc one? I thought...
You're not talking about like the bow thing or beast killer or something.
No. There was like a 1%. Every race had like a 1% crit or 1% something passive, something like that. And like Resto Shaman needed crit or something, and I ended up re-rolling ones for that. So yeah, I did all sorts of that stuff, man. I loved Resto Shaman though.
So you're a crazy min-maxer.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you guys remember Elitist Jerks, the website.
Yes.
Yeah, all the strats. Everyone would be like trying to figure out the best boss strats. Oh man, that was such a good time.
Yeah, I had my raid binder, like my notebook. Mm-hmm. Because I was at one point I was raiding, I think 4 nights a week. So yeah, I had just an old college ruled notebook that I kept all the strats down in. Mm-hmm. It was ridiculous, and I could have been doing better things with my time in college for sure. But
no, I was raiding BC, man. There's nothing better. You were preparing for this life, this job.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Don't knock those times.
Yeah,
I'm very curious. We're about to get into the health sustain conversation, but kind of to lead us into it, the idea of a warlock, you got to have dots, and if dots came into this game right now, I do not see them succeeding.
Ooh, interesting. I mean, Lunara
is already placing a dot in more or less.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, Lunara's sustainability is really, really high to compensate. So there is definitely something to be said that you can't just have, weak dots in an environment where there's so much sustain.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I can hear people typing. I'm sure we're going to get emails like, warlocks aren't only about dots. But the thing is, like, we already have Kael'thas, who's a fire mage. So I don't think that, and also you think of Gul'dan and how you, like, what the soul of that character is. I don't think they're going to design Gul'dan to be a destruction warlock. That just makes no sense to me. So I think you have to go the dot route. Like, when I think of Gul'dan, I think of him slowly just draining your life force. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're taking a bite off of another Heroes podcast, Heroes Forge. But like, what would you what do you think? Do you think dots? Do you think that could work, Dunk, or how would you design Gul'dan?
How would I design Gul'dan? I think one of your biggest thematic elements has to be life draining. I mean, that's like number one. So probably playing around with health bars, either like draining your opponent's health directly or sacrificing your health to empower your spells. Maybe even sacrificing allies' health in some way could be really, really interesting if they want to push the boundaries. Like, would that be an okay thing to do? Like, what if I could take 20% of my tank's HP, right, and put that shield on like a carry or something, or like on myself? Like, is that an interesting thing? Would that be compelling? I mean, I think there's like a lot of room, but you definitely want to play around with like transferring life and stuff like that to really fit into the character and what they do.
Yeah, that sounds extremely interesting to me, but at the same time, I think of solo queue, and I'm like, trolling, the troll potential is off the chain for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not even solo queue. I was raiding in BC, and we had our token warlock that always died, and you're like, why'd you die? I was out of mana. I had to life tap. And so I just imagine that same thing happening. Gul'dan's in the back, artillerying away whatever his class may be, and he just randomly dies. Sorry, guys, I was out of mana. I just wanted that last bit.
Yeah. I had to cast one more spell, dude. So I life tapped down to 1 health, and then I got hit by a random minion. You're like, okay, good work, dude.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have that experience again in another game. That sounds wonderful. So yeah, So you think he's probably gonna be the next hero, right?
I think he has to be, right? I mean, the Warcraft movie just came out. He's a teaser directly in a Blizzard official, Medivh thing. He just has to be the next hero, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be pretty weird to do anything else with how huge of a character he is in the Warcraft movie.
Yep. Well, and in the expansions right now too, but he did steal the show in the movie, and I hope there's an ultimate for him where he throws off his robe, again, gives people a big old face sucking bear hug.
Just smacks people down. That would be cool.
Just bear hugs you to death, just grabs you and drains the life straight out of you.
Like an Oxograb, but just better. He just walks up and he just holds you for the rest of the game, and you don't get to do anything.
The randomly buff old man. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's move into the health sustain discussion. So Matt Cooper made a post on the Hero site this past week talking about what they're currently focusing on internally. And I love this kind of stuff, and this was surprisingly detailed. So if you haven't read this, if you're not sure exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about health sustain, Matt Cooper said that this includes everything, including passive health regeneration globes, healing fountains, going back to the I always call it the fountain, right? I call it the fountain.
Hall of Storms.
Storms. Sorry,
It's
Hall
called
of
the Hall of
Storms.
Storms.
My bad.
It's a fountain.
I've played other MOBAs. I'm sorry. And he even did mention briefly support, but said that it wasn't really a conversation he wanted to get into right now because he kind of wanted to focus the discussion. And I can understand that. But there's a lot to dive in here. I'm not even sure where I really want to start. But let's just start with the very first thing that he mentioned, which was poke heroes. He mentioned Chromie. He mentioned Lunara. He said that they can have a lot of their damage output just straight up invalidated by constant upticks of health. And this is I think ties right into what we were just talking about with Gul'dan and you being concerned about dots, Kyle.
Yeah, if you spread around a bunch of dots, I mean, right now, depending on the support, right? I mean, you can get kind of tricky. If you're against an Uther, dots are great because he has to make some really interesting choices. Against Brightwing, maybe not so much.
Yeah. He also expands on that, just basically saying, all the damage you can do, the small wins of landing your skill shots, landing your abilities, doing damage, it ultimately does not matter unless you get the kill. So that's another reason why health sustain is problematic and something they have to keep in the back of their mind constantly while they're designing. They gave an example, an exception example, something like Zagara, where, if you're losing mana, you're not getting kills, it's okay as long as you win the lane game. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense to me. And that's where he starts to get into talk about the rewards for denying regeneration globes and how at the moment it doesn't really mean all that much if you deny someone getting a regen globe. Obviously, it means a little more if the person you denied has a quest talent where they need to get their globes, but even then, it's not the end of the world. So what this is kind of leading up to is a discussion of what they're messing with internally. So they're looking at tuning regeneration globes to be significantly more effective. They said that the math in the live game is awkward, so it's hard to give exact figures, but they said that it works out to roughly 6.2% of your max health and 32 mana, and that internally they're play testing increasing it to 12% of your max health and 8% of your max mana. So again, coming back to denying regen globes being something that you want to do, something that you feel like you're being rewarded for by accomplishing, and at the same time when you actually get a regeneration globe, it feels like it was worth your while. Dunk, what do you think about that?
I definitely have a really strong greed for the regen globes already. And I will walk into a terrible trade. I'll let Zagara cast a Hylish on me and walk into it for 4 seconds and walk back out for 4 seconds to get the globe because it makes me so upset to miss one, even though I know that's not correct. I'm gonna lose that trade. The health is not enough. So I think it's actually funny that if you make them more impactful, then in some ways the greed will be justified, or will I just get greedier? Who knows? But overall, I definitely think that the laning phase right now is missing a special something. It definitely feels like there's a lot of lane matchups where you're 1v1 and either there's nothing you can do to possibly win the lane or nothing you can do to damage your opponent. I'm sure everyone has played a matchup where you're playing a random hero and you're playing against a thrall in lane and you're just okay, he's just going to heal every wave, and it's a really frustrating experience. So I think they do need to take a look at that, because I don't think there's anything quite as frustrating in the game as just having a lane where you don't feel like you can interact with your opponent meaningfully, right? I mean, Zagara is a big offender too, so it's good that they mentioned her. I mean, but she's an offender in a worse way where you can't damage her, but she forces out almost every hero who doesn't have broken sustain, right? There's maybe half a dozen heroes who can lane against Zagara and not want to tear their eyeballs out. So I definitely think that it's something that needs to be looked into, and I'm glad they're addressing it. Making globes more powerful, it could be an interesting way to reward people who are willing to play more risky, get in that lane and actually get that globe, because a lot of times the best decision right now is to just walk around behind your minion wave on the mountain or something. And I think you need to do something to disincentivize that behavior. You want people to feel like they can interact with each other in a compelling way, even during. I know laning phase isn't that important for the game because there's all these objectives coming up. There's mercenaries, so it doesn't last that long. But you still don't want that at the start of the game. You know, you don't want to come out of the gates and then wait around for an objective right behind your minion wave. That's not compelling. So they need to do something, and I'm glad they're looking into it.
Yeah. And it's definitely a complex issue, just like you said. I mean, that's the thing I miss the most in this game. There's tons of things I dislike about the MOBAs that I moved from, but having a laning phase, getting to know my one or two guys on the enemy team, and then seeing them an hour later in Teamfight Town is a really interesting story that builds over the course of a game. And the objective pops, you have a bad lane, it didn't really matter so much. So, but on the other side of it too, like you get these regen globes, they might be great, but with the burst in the game, it's just too dangerous to even extend that far. There may be someone in a small map scenario on their way to you. It's simply not worth the risk.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm in the same camp as Dunk. Every time I see a regen globe, it must be mine.
I try to hold back. I remember back in that Leoric Johanna patch, I remember kind of bullying, trying to keep people off them, but rotations across solo queue and pro games have gotten so clean and effective. It's just too dangerous to get out there. And that's one of the things that interests me most about what they're saying here is if they can get the regen up in other forms of the game, they can help lower the burst damage in other areas. And the only reason why, Chromie's damage is so high, like they said, is because it has to be in order to be effective, because the regen in other departments is too large.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Should we move on to talk about what he said about healing fountains?
Do it.
All right. They apparently also want to make healing fountains, quote, a bigger moment. And I love that he mentioned what he called a crazy first idea that they had, which was to increase the cooldown on the healing fountains from 100 seconds to 300 seconds. They also said this was going to come with a buff that made sense to the healing fountain. But that they tested it quite a bit. So actually what they're playing with now is just increasing it from 100 to 120 seconds so that it's a meaningful change, but it's still familiar. It's not like you're coming into a new game, basically, with, whoa, why is the healing fountain so much longer all of a sudden? And they said that they also increased the mana provided from 20% to 30%, but kept the health the same. So how are we feeling about this as well?
I mean, I definitely think it's a good direction. It does feel right now that you can right now it feels like for a lot of heroes, the most efficient way to play the game is to just tap your well every time it's off cooldown, basically, to sustain your mana, and then you can trade a little more aggressively or whatever while you have the heal over time on you. So even adding 20 seconds does move that in the direction of making it a more meaningful decision making. So I think that's good. It should feel powerful when you tap your Moonwell, right? Like you should feel like you had to make a conscious choice. It shouldn't just be something you just do on cooldown. I think in general, it should be interesting how it plays out. I think that's one of the things where you really can't get the gist of it on paper. There are just some things that you have to play with to know how they actually make the game feel. And I trust them to have played enough with it to get a feel for it.
All right, Kyle.
I agree.
All right. I'm not sure how I feel. I always kind of like crazy changes, so I wouldn't have minded seeing the absurd change to adding the cooldown be 300 seconds. But at the same time, I understand why they think, hey, this may be too jarring of a change.
Absolutely.
To make.
I love fountains on Cursed Hollow because I get to make a choice. Did I push too hard? I got a hearth back before the objective. I need to ride out now. And then I can keep my fountain for if I take a little bit too much damage, go tap it, get back in the fight. Those are cool moments. Yeah. But on Tomb of the Spider Queen, whenever.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next point he brought up was passive health regeneration. Said that apparently on health regen, they've been testing quite a few variations. They said one interesting test was just straight up turning off passive health regeneration and not allowing players to pick any talents like Regen Master or First Aid, which, again, sounds nuts to me, but also really interesting. So they basically want damage that you take to be permanent. It needs to be offset either by a support or a well or going back to the hall. That just sounds nuts to me. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds interesting. I'm not saying I dislike it. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around it because of the game I've now known for years.
They give the best examples here, the most frightening ones. An Abathur mine with no regeneration in the game, just a Tyrande well. I mean, you'd be out of the fight accidentally.
Yeah. I think actually the way the game is right now, like that would be a nearly unplayable experience. There are just so many things in the game where you don't get an opportunity to react to the damage, and it doesn't really matter because the damage doesn't necessarily matter because you can just get it healed off by your support or regen it off. So I think actually changing that would be, it would be really frustrating. Imagine getting hit by like an Asmodan globe. You're just like, okay, I guess I have to go back to base. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think if they made this change, there would have to be a game-wide change to damage numbers across the board on every hero.
That's what I feel like
sure.
they're aiming for. They want to get away from Burst CC Town, where it's basically two teams kind of nebulously clashing together until someone steps out of line or the perfect stun lands, or those orbs and sandblasts hit at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely does feel that way. It's actually, I guess I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it is interesting that they didn't want to talk about supports and how they tie into this discussion. Because it seems like that's like a really big part of the discussion. So
I would not mind it if you wanted to talk about supports as part of the discussion, because I would like to know what's on your brain in regards to that.
You can't not.
Yeah, that was my first impression too, is like, okay, it's really interesting that you're looking at this sustain problem, right? Because the better sustain gets in the game, not only the more your poke damage heroes have to actually do, but the more burst all your heroes end up doing, because in order to actually kill anyone through sustain, you need tremendously more damage than is being healed off of them. Just because fundamentally in the mobile genre it's easier to like avoid damage than take it. Like you can always just walk away, and if you can't always necessarily like walk forward into that person, it makes it a lot more dangerous. So it's actually a really interesting kind of discussion, and it seems hard to take piecemeal without considering that supports just have so much impact, right, on the total health sustain of your team. Like the difference between, you were talking about like solo healer Tassadar, right? In your hero league experience, right? And those games are so fundamentally different than the games where you play with like a medic healer. Like just feel how different those games are, right? Your solo healer Tassadar game, you're constantly struggling to make your health effective. Like you don't want to like waste your shield. You don't want to like go in and take too much damage. You won't be able to get it healed off. I mean, you play a totally different game, and it's not worse. It's different, and like maybe it's even strong enough because solo healer Tass is so strong. But then you play a medic game and you just kind of like let your tank take damage, and as long as nobody like walks away from medic or they don't get on medic, then you can't die. So it's actually crazy like how much of a dynamic that is in the game. And I think some of that range is healthy, but right now it definitely feels like everybody either blows up instantly or you can't kill them. Just I don't know.
And
it's
that
weird.
and that giant divide that you just described, I find extremely interesting, because I think watching a game where a team is more sustain built and it's built around a Morales, and the opposing team has a Tassadar and maybe they have a very strong dive comp, he's just throwing shields on people and they're diving after the Morales. That sounds really interesting to me. That's something I want to watch, and that's something I would like to see more in my solo queue games. However, I think doing that Tassadar strategy is such a insanely higher risk compared to doing the Morales strategy that you're not incentivizing your player base to take that risk.
I think that's actually something even at the professional level, we would discuss this a lot. We would talk about which team has the burden of execution, right, is what we called it. I mean, that's our fancy phrase for it. But it basically just means like if both teams suck and they play each other, who would win, versus if both teams are literally perfect players and play each other, who would win, right? Because in an ideal world where you're the best team in the world playing a mirror image of your also best team in the world, your skill level is so high that having the higher burden of execution is actually a real problem, because now you suddenly have to be better than your opponents to win. And it's really interesting. Like you want strategies to be as rewarding as they are difficult, if that makes sense. So you want the curve of like how rewarding something is to be relative to how hard it is to do. So if a strategy is like really easy to pull off, like medic, and the way you play medic is just don't get dived and let your tanks sit in front of you. Like that's not super complex. And yeah, we can get into discussions about how like dive comps can punish medic so hard, blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally that's easy. Whereas Tassadar, you have to balance all of this. You can't heal damage off. You can't do all sorts of these things. You don't have like big tools on Tassadar. He's like that's shield only. So you want that to be really rewarding because the burden of execution is so much higher. And I think that's something where Medivh is actually like a really magical character to have in the game because his burden of execution is super high, but at least theoretically he has so much cool utility that it might be worth it once he's tuned appropriately. If he isn't now, I mean, I just don't know, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. So that's why I'm very interested in Matt Cooper's post here because I'm very anxious to see what the changes to health sustain, what kind of world that will bring us to after they start kind of tweaking and playing around with this, and maybe it closes that gap between your risk and your reward, so we start seeing hopefully a less stale meta really at the end of the day.
And something less punishing. And I think that's what this is ultimately aiming at, is a world where we can lower the sustain and therefore get rid of these crutches that Li Ming and Chromie have for their damage so that they can actually be effective. That arcane hits right now, you need to get healed up right now or you're already dead, too late.
Yeah.
And in an ideal world, that's a little slower, that's a little more interesting. Now I have to make that choice to go get my well. I mean, Dunk, what would you think of a world where, let's say Uther did twice as much damage? His stun was a little longer again, but he didn't put out the healing he currently does.
Well, it's kind of interesting you'd say that. We actually kind of had that world about a year ago in the game. Your supports were all more offensive oriented, and like your Brightwings took Emerald Wind. Your Uthers killed people with Divine Storm, right? Your damage dealers were Vala and Raynor, and Tassadar was it like a damage dealer. So it wasn't like you had Kael'thas, Li Ming insta-giving people who step a little bit out of position. It was a fundamentally different game at that time. And I think it's actually interesting the way the game has gone since then. Supports have kind of seen themselves moved out of the Emerald Wind D-Storm into the heal your allies up realm. We've seen high burst damage mages come in to enable people to kill people. You know, Arthas went from being a god in those days, right? Like he was an unstoppable monster, and like you felt it, right? When an Arthas was like walking at you, you knew he didn't have a gap closer, and you knew he had to hit a skill shot to root you, but like you felt like this unstoppable force was coming at you because at that time the damage dealers just couldn't cut through an Arthas, right? And now if an Arthas goes out of position against a Kael'thas Li Ming, he just disappears anyway. So I think if you do tweak the sustain back down, maybe you can get to some of that, right? You can get back to that feeling of having those dynamic characters and feeling a difference between like a burst hero and a sustained damage hero again.
I'd like to see that. I'd also like to go back to that world where Arthas was Jason Voorhees. I miss that a lot. So, well, any closing thoughts before we move on from the health sustain? I also want to make sure our listeners know you head over to the official Heroes forums and read this post in full. We only hit kind of the highlights here, and they're being very, very specific. They want to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
I love that they're doing this. That we're getting kind of this. We're getting a peek through the crack of the door on what they're working on, and I want to see them keep doing this because Kyle and I bring this up all the time. We used to cover StarCraft, and this is not the Team One we know.
Yeah,
so it's really cool seeing this stuff before it's even on the PTR, let alone in the live game.
But it does have a feeling of inevitability because of the testing map. I know there was a lot of people upset about those changes, didn't want that to come through. Your feedback was heard. Here you go, and just kind of happened.
Yeah.
So it feels like, just from history of Blizzard, that this is where we're going. Mm-hmm. And we can't really stop it. Maybe we can change it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. I'd be happy with these changes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there is something to be said, though, about it's easy to talk in a circle about the design all day, and that's what the play race is going to do. But at the end of the day, I feel like it really comes down to Blizzard kind of taking that feedback, and you have to try it and get play tests in to honestly know what's going to feel good or not. That's what it all ends up coming down to in my experiences. does this actually play as well as it sounds on paper? Because you can talk and make anything sound cool, I feel like, but then you actually get into a game that has it and you're just like, oh, maybe this was too much. Like maybe we're not playing the same game anymore. You don't want to get there. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what actually comes out of this attempt at being, really transparent and letting the player base try to guide the direction of the game.
Yeah, I'd like that too. And they've shown in the past that they're willing to put some big changes out there for us to test. I mean, we sat with the scaling changes on the test map for quite a while before that went live. And to me, I'm looking at some of these changes they're suggesting that they're playtesting internally, and it reminds me a lot of that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this up on the test server sometime relatively soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Fingers crossed. Moving on, let's rapid fire mini news. Some other interesting things have been coming out of the official Heroes team. There's a new show called Beyond the Nexus, where they're going to have Gillyweed and Dreadnought taking you through all kinds of stuff within the Heroes of the Storm world, but specifically esports. So the Summer Championship is coming up, so go check that out. It looks great. I could listen to Dreadnought and Gillyweed kind of yammer on all day about Heroes, so I'm
excited to see where it goes. Right now, it is a bit Action 7 newsy for me. It's a little off the teleprompter, but that's also the comfort of these performers, and that's going to change as they get adapted to this world. I hope Blizzard gives the show long enough to reach that comfort point and doesn't make quick cuts early on.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's a little more scripted versus where we're used to seeing Gillyweed and Dreadnought, which is casting. So you're coming up with things to say on the fly and kind of letting your personality shine.
And I'd love the best friends desk that's kind of developed since the secret summit meeting. They all sort of had their trust fall exercise in the ropes course, and it's awesome to see everyone being such good friends up there. Yeah. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we go back 2 weeks, everyone thinks this game is dead and that Blizzard isn't going to support it. I mean, Beyond the Nexus is a big production. I mean, from a pro player standpoint, how important is something like this to you guys, or do you guys just say, don't watch that, we got a scrim right now?
It's actually interesting. I think Beyond the Nexus could be a useful tool. Like, for the health of the esport, you want to convert players who don't know anything else about the game other than play it. You want to show them, like, there's so much more, right? You just play Heroes, but there's so much more Heroes you could have, right? And, there's the esports aspect. There's all the extra content from, like, the YouTubers and the Twitch streams and stuff like that. So I think having more things that Blizzard specifically endorses that push people from just playing the game to also, being active members of the community, checking out all that content, listening to podcasts like this one, you get all that stuff. And the more people that do all those things, the more the community is going to grow. And I think that's good for the game overall. The healthier your community is, and then also for esports, it's really important to have, a watching player base.
I agree. And it's so strange looking at how the landscape has changed in recent years, because you go back not even a decade. You basically go like pre-Twitch. And yeah, there was a YouTube community, but nothing like it is now. And it's just like every game out there, kind of every game worth its salt that has a healthy esport. I mean, there's countless YouTube channels, there's Twitch streamers, there's podcasts, there's machinima. It kind of just goes with the territory now. Like, I'm sitting here as I've been loving Overwatch, and I'm just like, all right, when's the totally awesome, looks like it was made by Blizzard Overwatch machinima gonna kick on? Because I know it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, no, it is really cool. I remember, I don't know, for me, I feel like the whole, like, online things that were separate from the game started in World of Warcraft. That was where there was, like, World of Warcraft and Halo were around the similar times as far as, like, having really awesome machinima.
Yes.
That, totally, I feel like opened the doors for all of that cool extra game, like, outside of game content, that you have all these captive audience of the player base that wants to see this content that has to do with their favorite player, their favorite characters in this game universe, all that sort of stuff. So it's actually really cool.
Yeah. And now I just want to go watch Red versus Blue in Illegal Danish. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Blizzard put up feats of strength for the ranked preseason, and I didn't know this was coming, but it was very fun to browse through it and see whose battle tags had the most wins from preseason. Who had the most wins as a two-player party. I was sad not to see Kyle and I up there.
Well, we didn't try that hard.
I know,
Can you
I know we
imagine
didn't.
if people knew this was coming? Guess what?
Oh,
We're
yeah.
going to put up a board of the top winning Murky players in Hero League. Get ready. Like, the fact that this just kind of happened, I love it. You
Yeah.
announce that this sort of thing's happening, like most Hero win leagues is Butcher, I'm a little scared.
Yeah. I actually think it's really cool how organic it was. It's better that they picked things that people didn't know in advance, so you didn't have people gaming the system like you're talking about.
Yeah.
It makes it more fun. Like, you get to see who actually loves Butcher, who actually loves Murky, as opposed to the guy who's like, oh, I want to get my name on the feat of strength thing. Like, that's not the same, right?
Yeah, and I like that they didn't do one for every hero. So if I'm sure they'll do another one of these for season 1. So you don't know what heroes they're gonna pick.
Chromie. They're definitely picking Chromie.
Are they?
Lost Vikings wasn't here.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So fun stuff. I'm anxious to see what comes up in season 1. I also want to see some sillier things. I always love the infographics that come out with every game, and it's just like, I don't know, if it was WoW, it was how many sheep killed or something like that. So I'd like to see those kind of numbers come out for heroes as well. I don't know if they're tracking them, but I always get a good chuckle out of those. And
How many Murkies killed would be a good one.
Yes, yes,
Just
it
like
would.
a total count of Murkies killed this season. That would be interesting.
It'd be cool. Like, normally I don't think it'd be great because then you're kind of showing how much everyone died. But those top 3 Murky players, you could have put their deaths next to it because of the way Murky is designed. I think that'd be a fun number to see.
Yeah.
That'd
That would be
great.
cool.
So it's like, hey, you made the top 3. The hero is designed to die. I want to see that number. I'm sure it's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
So and finally, there's now a Twitch streaming schedule on the official Hero site. And no, we're not just bringing this up because we're on it, but it's pretty awesome to be on it. So thank you guys over at Team One. That's pretty sweet.
But either way, it's a promotion thing. It is brand new. There's some people who aren't upset that are upset that they're on this thing or what have you. It looks like they're going to add multiple language support to it coming up soon too. And the fact that Blizzard is doing this, I mean, to toot our old man horns again for StarCraft, this is insane. And this takes people a lot of time. I've made an Excel sheet before, many of them, and this is prettier than that.
Yeah, I would not want to crank one of these out every week. Hey, there's a reason, guys, that you can't go to the Into the Nexus Twitter and see our streaming schedule for the week because I have enough stuff to make in Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I the amount of stuff that came on the heels, the amount of kind of community outreach that came on the heels of season 1 has really just been, I think, a breath of fresh air. I've been really digging it. So good on you, Team 1. I think it's been a good week to be a Heroes fan overall, even if my personal placement games were less than stellar.
Yeah, definitely.
Happens.
I mean, we also see for the first time there's like you can live go directly to the Heroes Championship from the client when it's live.
Yeah.
Like while the tournament's live, and that's a first. So like that's really cool too. It's just another thing that helps tie the player base together, into the whole community aspect. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, it works just the same way as the Grandmaster leaderboard does. It gives you that warning. This will open a window outside of the game, and that's all over the client now, and I'm glad. I mean, we've been begging to be able to watch Blizzard esports within the individual Blizzard games forever, and that still stands. I would still love for that to be an option, but in the meantime, this is a great stepping stone. This is I think a really good thing to add to the game.
Yeah, definitely.
So, well. Let's move on and hear what Dustin Browder has been tweeting this week.
Right. I could be wrong.
He said that the team might be making dancing and taunting easier in the future to dissuade bee walking, in what was probably my favorite response to any tweet that he made this week. Someone was complaining that they were sick of having people heart spamming when they die. And so the exact thing was, we were thinking about making /dance and /taunt easier would make bee walking seem tame. Bad idea? ?
Oh boy.
Yeah, I love it. I personally would love that, because you're bee walking thinking you're a badass, but are you so badass you're gonna taunt and lock your movement for a few seconds?
Chromie changed the face of the game, man. That is a amazing and very loud taunt she has, spawning a dragon behind her to roar. And with her patch, they added the functionality that unless you changed it, it's your number key 1 and 2 for a taunt and a dance.
Yeah, I believe it's even on hotkeys, so you can rebind it wherever you want. Do it to your mouse wheel, so you can really
good.
you can really dance as much as you want.
But B-stepping does light a fire in your soul.
It does.
For me, if I'm on tilt, that kind of snaps me back out of it. It's like, okay, all right, gloves are off. Let's do this.
I think it's good because it gives you another way to show personality, right? You can't talk to your opponents in this game, right? There's no all chat. That's not an option. Which, as much as that makes the game healthier, it does remove some of the personality, and I like having an option to like being able to, because I never dance or taunt honestly in game. Like I'll play a new hero for the first time, I'll walk out of my Hall of Storms, walk near my core, do the dance, do the taunt to see what they are, and then I just never find myself enter / taunt. Like I never do that, right? So having just more personality, it's fun, and you want to see those animations get used. The artists made them and they're cool. Might as well use them.
Yeah, I'd like to see them too, and I want to see more of them that are to the degree that Chromie's is, like something really kind of cool and out there.
Have you seen Zool's dance?
I have.
The spooky, scary skeleton swiggle.
No, I haven't. I have not heard that, but I hope that's the official name.
It breaks some physics and his bones. It is an impressive feat.
That's cool. It should be Leoric though. I mean,
yeah.
That's true.
I mean, Greymane should be doing Thriller, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's the requirement. That's what he should be doing. So, this isn't necessarily a Dustin Browder tweet. It came from the official Blizz Heroes Twitter account, but lifetime stats are coming back to our profile page soon. At the moment, if you go and you look at your profile, you're only seeing your statistics for this season, but that will be fixed in the future, which makes me happy because I totally checked some people's profiles this week when very questionable heroes were picked. I'm like, what? They only have like 4 games on. Oh wait, and I checked my own profile. I'm like, oh, never mind. This makes sense now. I know I have more than 2 games played on Zagara. Well, I'm glad to hear that the lifetime stats will be coming back. And then finally, Medivh's portals do not remove Symmetra as a possible hero.
Would Symmetra fit that well in Heroes? That's an interesting question.
That's the thing. It's hilarious. We've been talking a lot of Overwatch heroes lately. We do a call-in show once a month where our listeners can call in, and every time someone naturally wants to talk about what Overwatch heroes we want to see in the game. Yeah, I don't think Symmetra's ever come up. And yeah, I don't know how she would work because she has a channeling beam and then she can charge it up and it shoots an orb. But really, it's the turrets kind of thing, because in Overwatch, it's all about kind of finding a good hiding spot for them.
Yeah.
How do you hide a turret in Heroes?
Yeah, it would be interesting. Not that I'm advocating more turret heroes, because I don't really like turret heroes, but it would be interesting. I wonder how she'd fit, because I feel like Tracer's an easy conversion, right? Like, Tracer seems like she fits. They had to do some weird stuff with, like, attacking while you're moving, but overall, the kit seems like it could be a MOBA character. Whereas Symmetra, I don't know. It's different. It would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm in no rush to see Symmetra in the game. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Of all the awesome heroes I could think of from like the Warcraft universe, even StarCraft, maybe some Diablo.
Yep.
I look at Overwatch and I'm like, you're the new kid on the block. You don't need that many heroes. No. And even if you did, Symmetra wouldn't be the first I'd put on the list.
No, you don't. Although I would not mind seeing Reinhardt sometime very soon because he's just sweet. And I want more warriors. Really bad. But yeah, we'll have to see. And also Jaina, if you have her lunar skin and the final third tint already kind of has a Symmetra tint. So
yeah. Go
rock that if you want to get your Symmetra fix for now. It's just that she's shooting ice instead of science lasers. So well, before we move on, let's thank our patrons who are supporting the show over at patreon.com/ITN. This episode, we wanted to thank Bob T. Skull. Thank you, Bob. That silly, absurd, wonderful reference to the Dresden Files is all over our shows, so I appreciate it, Bob. Thank you to Jared L., Jerry, James M., Dave H., Tobias B., William R., and Mike S. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. We really do appreciate it. And if you're watching live, stick around. You might be able to kick my butt in an after-show game or two. At least that's usually how it goes. So we're not going to move into emails or strategy this week. We, as you guys can see, we already spent about an hour and 20 minutes talking about the patch, but we are going to end with a question or two for you, DunkTrain, from our listeners, if that's okay. And
Sure.
we have our first question from Alex, who asks the interview question that must always be asked. Where did the name DunkTrain come from? Is it the name you used for any game, or did you choose it specifically for Heroes of the Storm?
I didn't choose it specifically for Heroes. I actually chose it specifically when I was trying to become a streamer in general. My old name was just an abysmal, like, you know, those, you're a 10-year-old and you make your first online username, right? And then for some reason you stick with it until someone slaps you and is like, you're an idiot. Why do you still have that username? That was my moment when I started to try and be a streamer. And I was like, okay, I can't have this 8-syllable long, really, really terribly kiddie name anymore. So I basically, at that time, was playing a lot of League of Legends, and the whole like dunking being turned into like a gaming term when you like style on someone was really big at that time. And I was just looking for something that was, you know, fun. I wanted to keep, like, a lot of people are really serious about their names and stuff, but you're playing video games, man. You're here to have a good time. I wanted something that was more fun, and I just felt like, you know, DunkTrain, it's like you're chaining, styling on people, stuff like that. It's like a fun kind of concept. So that's really where it came from. Plus, it's only 2 syllables. It's easy to say, easy to remember. You get to joke around and have a toy train whistle and a conductor hat. So, you know, it's good times.
That is fantastically crafted.
Also, it's really good SEO, man. It's phonetic. You can't misspell it if you're, you know, if you just hear it. That's why I don't use my last name on anything, because no one's gonna get that stuff right.
So what was it? I mean, was it like Deathlord 27?
Was it like XXX Sephiroth Gogeta like 69?
It was pretty much that bad.
Okay.
It might have been a Yu-Gi-Oh card at one point.
Okay. All right.
It was that level of bad.
Oh, I love this.
Oh, you can't tease out. But come on. I mean,
no.
XX Blue Eyes Forever? I mean,
No, it wasn't anything to do with Blue Eyes. But no, only a very small number of my friends actually know what it was. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Did you play
Fair enough.
every card game? Because I distinctly remember discussing Pokemon with you at DreamHack.
Yes, I am a big sucker for card games, board games, video games, fantasy books. I mean, I love all that stuff, man. I spent a lot more time doing that stuff than schoolwork growing up. So
Nice. Good man. Just like you should.
Hey, if you play like, that's actually something, you learned a lot of cool vocabulary from playing the original Pokemon games, like from playing Magic the Gathering. They use some intense words in those. And if you're a kid, like picking that stuff up, you learn hella good, you know, vocabulary skills. Although obviously that's all gone away considering what I just said, but oh well.
and math. You learn good math. You learn about board presence, which goes into all aspects of life. I mean, are you going to make a move that actually affects your life, or is it going to be just pretty in the background? Like so many of my favorite cards.
Are you gonna? Is this helping you win, or is it just helping you win more?
The true life question.
Absolutely. Well, the next question came from Win Magegar, which just rolls off the tongue, who said, I was hoping you might address how to handle high damage comps, example, 4 assassins and a healer. There was one game where we tried to double tank as last 2 picks when it was obvious they were going to run no tank or no healer and got completely destroyed as the other team gained a 2-level lead before level 10. He says he thinks it was Kerrigan, Leeming, Tracer, Rhaegar, Zagara. Another game we played a Johanna, KT, Illidan, Zul, Monk into Nova, Leeming, Tracer, Rhaegar, Greymane, and won after a prolonged bloodbath. Any advice on drafting and in-game strategy other than maybe play safe early? Love the show. Win Magegar.
Ooh, that's actually a really interesting question. It's very difficult, actually, to adapt to people playing way outside the meta. I mean, if people play a little outside the meta, I think most people are capable of adapting to that. But if you play like 5 supports, it's actually it's like a fundamentally different game than playing like a traditional composition. So let's say you're playing against like a super high damage, really squishy team like the one he listed. What's the best way to deal with that? I think first off, you need something to disrupt them. Like that team would suffer heavily if like two or three of them were caught in a void prison, right? And the others were isolated. Or if you have a lot of disruption, like a Thrall Sundering or something. Like generally the squishy teams with a lot of damage end up playing more like a combo card game deck, essentially. Like their combo is that they have to focus fire someone down and kill them fast because they don't have sustain, right? So you want to pick things that are disruptive, right? You don't have counter spells in this game, but you might have Void Prison or Sunder or Gust, and then you can kind of like disengage and, you know, break up their attack. And that's one of the most effective ways to deal with that really all-in kind of strategy.
Do you think you should go heavy into like a double tank comp to try and offset the damage?
I mean, it depends a lot on specifics, I think, because some heroes maybe are... There are some heroes where they're squishy, but they're good against tanks. Like, you wouldn't necessarily want to stack tanks against Illidan, right? He's going to just lifesteal through your tank damage a lot of the time. But then against maybe like a Vala or a Raynor, they can't really do that much damage to your tanks if your tanks are running at them together. So yeah, it would be effective against that. So it's more specific than that, unfortunately. But you definitely need something. Like maybe double tank wasn't right there because their team comp had so much damage they could melt your tanks. But maybe if you had more disruptive characters overall, you could have prevented them from hitting the same target at the same time, right? It just depends.
What would be the proactive thing to do? Because someone's going to get through. We have all our sort of OP ban out first heroes, but Li Ming sneaks through. Sometimes it's someone else. Once the Li Ming is on the enemy team, what should you get on your team to counter that? Should you just try to stop them from stacking? Like get that Thrall away, get all the pretty ones on your side instead?
So as far as draft is concerned right now, if an enemy early picks Li Ming, my favorite response is to take Anub'arak and go Dampen Magic at level 1, which lets you eat most of her orbs without taking meaningful damage, and then in the actual team fight phase, you just dive on her and she just cannot get away with you. So that's my favorite counter right now for Li Ming specifically. If that's not available, Zagara and Zul are actually really good depending on the map because it's really hard for Li Ming to hit her damage through all those summons. So that my definitely recommendation against Li Ming specifically is try to get some sort of summons on your team to block the Li Ming damage since it's all direct line skill shots.
I was having the hardest time on Li Ming with all the Anub'araks out there this week. Just beetles absorbing everything I'm throwing at them.
Yeah. Every time
like
you... Go ahead.
Go. I just, when you get the Anub'arak on your team, I feel like you've started that weird train, even though his win rate's fantastic. And people want the second tank, but they don't know if they want a Sonya for the damage to take advantage of all the stun, or if they want like Johanna, etc., something really beefy to make up for Anub'arak's lack of being able to tank any sustained damage once his, shield is down.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know. You just hope your team picks good heroes, right? I think Anub'arak actually can work with pretty much anyone. And as long as your team... I think it's actually way more common that your team psychs themselves out, unfortunately. So if you pick a weird pick, even if it's good, a lot of the times your team would be like, oh, why did he pick that? Or like whatever. My response is, if someone on your team picks something and you're like, I don't know why that guy picked something, don't be the guy who types in chat, why'd you pick that? You suck. You should have picked X. Go, uninstall the game. Don't be that guy, right? At least let them try to prove why they should have picked that hero, right? If it's a really niche pick, like if someone picks an Artanis on your team, just trust that maybe they play a lot of Artanis and they recognize this is a good situation for it. Don't immediately go off the rails on them. I mean, don't rage at them anyway, no matter what, but definitely don't bring your team's morale down in the draft screen, right? You can still win the game.
So play as normal is probably the best thing to do. Artanis is going to Artanis, but we shouldn't build a comp around Artanis. We'll just do our thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you know how to play heroes that go well with Artanis, like you just happen to, you go for it. But I don't think you should necessarily play. And this, you mentioned it earlier, DunkTrain, which was you shouldn't necessarily play a hero that is considered by the meta better for the comp if you don't know how to play that hero.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I love Anub'arak right now, and I'm definitely asking for myself too.
Good.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, best teammates with him are pretty much anyone who can follow up on his dive. Like, Anub'arak is particularly bad with Medic, because Medic is like the antithesis. Regardless, however,
They didn't use
you
it in
go-
magic cards. You're okay.
Yeah, you're right. You don't pronounce magic cards out loud, and okay, you do, but anyway, like a medic always wants to stay deathballed, tight group, protect your flanks, not dive, right? So you wouldn't want to pick a medic with a Anub'arak because the Anub'arak wants to get into the backline, right? Disrupt them, and your medic won't be able to get to your Anub'arak to heal. So you want to maybe pick like a Brightwing, right? Who can get to your Anub'arak, who can toss the spell shield before he goes in, and even if the Brightwing goes in with the Anub'arak, he can blink heal back out, that sort of thing. So you definitely do want to do some of that. Just in general, more mobile heroes that aren't as concerned about their positioning are better with Anub'arak than things like Medic or Raynor, for example.
Well answered. And then to take just one fun question from the chat room, Jeffrey B wanted to know how long that beard took.
So the beard, if I had to guess how long you would have to grow it out to get to this point, is probably a year. But
Okay.
I've had the beard for many years, and at various points it's been different lengths, and it's hard to keep track of exactly how long it takes to grow to a certain length if you never go back to being clean shaven, right?
Yeah.
I just honestly I don't know.
All right. Well,
Beards are in.
you have to commit for a year. It sounds like Jeffrey B. If you want the majesty that is DunkTrain's beard, at least that's your minimum investment to even attempt.
Yeah.
Well,
And
wonderful.
There's a great question here to finish us out on. Who are you rooting for the summer now?
Who am I rooting for? Probably Dignitas. I have met Dignitas multiple times at international events, and those guys are great. I think they're really good players. I think they have a ton of potential. They recently had a roster change before the most recent Europe event, so everyone's kind of questioning how good they are going into this event. So that's the storyline I want to watch most, is like, do they make it out of their groups? How good do they look? Are they at their peak potential, right? I don't necessarily think they're like a favorite to win or anything, but they're definitely the team that I'm the most invested in their storyline because I know them personally. I know they're good guys. They're a lot of fun to hang out with. And, they've just had like an interesting run.
Yeah, they've had good showings at the ESL events.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, they're fun.
Awesome. Well, Dunk, you've been so darn generous with your time. Really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us now for the better part of 2 hours. So, where can everyone find you when you're not guesting on podcasts and whatnot?
When I'm not on podcasts, you can check me out on Twitter at DunkTrain, like right below my webcam. You can see that if you don't know how to spell dunk or train, in which case you should probably read some more Magic cards. In all seriousness, no, I also stream on twitch.tv/DunkTrain, so you can find me in either of those places. Always happy to, hang out with people, talk, Twitch chat. So much fun. And, it's pretty much what it is.
Awesome. Well, everyone go follow him. Good man with very nerdy side interests, as we've come to find out today, which is just fantastic. Thanks again, everyone listening. Thank you to our patrons over at patreon.com/ITN. If you want to support the show, that is where you can do so. Keep those iTunes reviews coming. If you're an iTunes podcast listener, they help the show out quite a bit. Help us find new listeners. We always appreciate those. And don't forget to check out amove.tv. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Declan H. and Cheesy Bob. You guys are awesome. You can get our swag and merchandise over at bit.ly/amovestore. And you can catch us live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on twitch.tv/amovetv. Follow the show on Twitter at ITNcast. And huge thanks to Gorath for making our intro music. And also Brian Griffith, who made our original intro music, which is still hanging around in various bumpers and intros on the show. So go check out those two lovely musicians. Kyle, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Ferguson, 2 S's in Ferguson. I need to go to the School of Dunk and make a real nice name.
Yeah.
I just went with something from D&D. Now I feel ill-equipped for the new internet age.
At least you're not Gogeta Roth.
At least.
True. Or something emo. Like, have you guys checked out the Reaper Names Twitter?
Oh,
That one
No.
was amazing. That was
No, I
amazing.
do follow Emo Kylo Ren though,
Yeah.
which
Good
is
stuff, too.
one of my favorite things in the world. But oh yeah, I had plenty of like My Chemical Romance screen names, like WoW characters.
Mine once had Death Scythe Gundam kind of
Oh
in it.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
Konami. Come on, man, you can't.
Yeah, dude.
Little
Running
more-
at you, Warcraft 3, Dota mod, doing that Night Stalker. Here comes Death Scythe. Yep.
You delightfully cheesy man. Love it. I love
Just
it.
13, not cheesy, just 13 years old.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, you can follow me on Twitter at Garrett Art. You can find all of the other podcasts that I do at amove.tv. Kyle and I actually just sat down with Jocelyn and did a spoiler show for the Warcraft movie, which you can find if you anywhere where you're listening to the podcast. If you look up "Embrace the Spoilers," that's the feed that it is on. Don't be confused by the 8 Game of Thrones episodes that are on there. It's the same feed that the Warcraft episode is on. So if you want to find it on your RSS catcher, that's the way to do it. Otherwise, it's on amove.tv right now. Other than that, thanks to our sponsors, DockHouseSystems.com. Use the code ITN at checkout. You will get a free solid-state drive added on to your gaming rig. You can also use the code ITN over at tweakedaudio.com, where you will get 30% off and free shipping off your entire order of earbuds from their inventory. Go check them out. We thank them for their support. Dunk, thank you one more time for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, good luck and have fun.
Take care.
Woo! That's a show.